The highway stretched out like an endless ribbon of black asphalt beneath a fading sky, the last orange streaks of daylight dissolving into the blue haze of dusk. The hum of tires against the road was steady, almost meditative, a sound Maya Thompson knew better than her own heartbeat. She'd been driving trucks for over a decade, clocking more miles than she could ever count. For her, the cab of that 18-wheeler wasn't just a workplace, it was a second home, fortress of solitude where she felt most in control. The world behind her windshield was vast and lonely, but Maya preferred it that way. Out here on the open road, there was no judgment, no chatter, no one trying to tell her she didn't belong. She was a black woman in a career dominated by men. And she'd long ago learned to carve her space with discipline and determination. Some underestimated her, sure, but Maya thrived on that. Let people assume she was weak, fragile, out of place. They'd never know until it was too late that beneath her calm exterior lived years of training, discipline, and unyielding strength. The rig rumbled forward, hauling a container packed with electronics bound for a distribution center to States. Away. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and it paid well enough to keep her life steady. Besides, she liked the challenge. Nights like this with the stars emerging and the road stretching endless reminded her why she loved the job. It was freedom. But freedom, she knew, was fragile. Maya checked her mirror's habit more than anything. A pair of headlights caught her attention, then another. She squinted slightly. 3 SUVs, sleek and dark, hung a little too close behind her, weaving in and out of her lane as though playing some silent game. At first she dismissed it. Night driving brought out the worst in people. Reckless swerving, speeding, tired motorists trying to shake off fatigue. But as the miles ticked by, the SUV's behavior shifted from irritating to menacing. They weren't just following traffic, they were tracking her. Her grip on the wheel tightened. She'd seen this kind of tactic before in training exercises. Back in her karate dojo days, when instructors taught her about awareness, don't just see your surroundings, her sensei had drilled into her. Read them. Patterns reveal intent. The pattern now was obvious. The SUVs were communicating silently, hemming her in. The pit in her stomach grew heavier. Up ahead, one of the vehicles gunned forward and cut in front of her truck, slowing sharply. Reflexively, Maya eased on the brakes, the rig groaning. In protest, at the same time, the other 2 SUVs surged alongside, one hugging the left lane, the other sliding tight on her right. Her heart began to thump harder, not out of fear but out of recognition. This wasn't carelessness. This was a box-in. Damn it, she muttered under her breath, scanning for an escape. But the road here was narrow, flanked by thick trees and ditches. There was no room to swerve the 18-wheeler free. The lead SUV braked harder, forcing her to a near crawl. Red brake lights glowed like devil's eyes ahead of her windshield. She slammed her fist against the horn, blaring the truck's deep roar, but the SUVs didn't budge. Instead, they slowed her to a complete stop in the middle of the deserted highway. Her chest filled with that eerie quiet. The kind that comes just before chaos. Doors flew open. 6 men spilled from the SUVs, faces obscured by masks, their movements sharp and purposeful. One carried a crowbar, another a pistol gleaming under the moonlight. They spread out quickly, surrounding the cab like wolves circling prey. Maya's pulse quickened, but her mind stayed cold, calculating. She'd been in danger before roadside harassment, even a near carjacking years back, but this was something bigger, organized, efficient. These weren't amateurs. She reached instinctively for her CB radio, thumb hovering over the button. But before she could speak, the driver's side mirror shattered with a sudden smash. Glass sprayed inward, glittering shards bouncing across the seat. She flinched back, her hand moving to defend herself, but the muzzle of a gun pressed against her temple before she could act out. The masked man barked, his voice sharp, rough with authority. Out of the truck now. Maya froze, her breath steadying in her chest. She could fight, she knew. She could drive her elbow into the gunman's wrist, seize the weapon, and dismantle him in seconds. But the others were too close to alert. Fighting here in this cramped cab with multiple attackers and no control of her surroundings would be suicide. Her training had taught her not just how to fight, but when. Timing was everything, so she obeyed. Slowly, carefully, she slid from the seat, stepping down to the asphalt. Her boots hit the ground with a heavy thud. 2 more men grabbed her arms, yanking them behind her back, binding her wrists with zip ties. She didn't resist, not yet. Every motion, every angle of their approach, every careless detail about their grip and stance, she recorded in her head. These men thought they had her under control. They had no idea. "Check her wallet," one of them barked. A man snatched her leather wallet from the cab, flipping it open. Thompson, he read aloud with a mocking laugh. "Well, Maya, looks like you're going to be taking a little ride with us. Hope you're comfortable." With long drives, the group chuckled, their tension breaking into cruel amusement. They shoved her toward one of the SUVs. Pushing her into the back seat between 2 men who smelled of cigarettes and gasoline, the leader climbed into the passenger side up front, snapping his fingers at the driver. "Go!" The SUV peeled away, tires screeching, leaving Maya's 18-wheeler abandoned on the shoulder of the highway, its headlights still burning, uselessly into the night. The men laughed and jeered, already celebrating a victory they hadn't yet secured. "We'll strip that rig clean. Electronics haul like that. Easy money. Sell the load, ditch the truck, dump her. Gonna miss a trucker," one said. The others agreed, their voices overlapping in greedy excitement. Maya sat still between them, wrists bound, eyes lowered to the floor, as if defeated. In truth, her mind was sharper than ever, cataloging everything, their numbers, their weapons, their arrogance. She knew what they didn't. They thought they'd caught prey. But what they'd really done was lock themselves in a cage with a predator. SUV roared down the dark highway, its headlights carving twin beams into the night. Inside, the men spoke in low, excited tones, their voices thick with the overconfidence of predators who believed the hunt was already over. Maya sat between 2 of them in the back seat, wrists bound tightly behind her with zip ties. She kept her breathing steady, her face expressionless, eyes focused on the rhythm of the road flashing by. Outwardly, she seemed beaten, compliant. A woman dragged into a nightmare she had no way out of. Inwardly, her mind sharpened like a blade. Karate wasn't just fighting. That was what her sensei had drilled into her over and over. The body is your weapon, but the mind is your general. The fight is won here. He'd tap his temple before it's ever won here. He'd strike his fist into his palm. Maya never forgot that. Right now, her body was restrained, her options limited, but her mind was already steps ahead. The man on her right nudged her with an elbow, grinning beneath his mask. "You scared, lady? You should be. You're gonna wish you'd never taken this route tonight." She didn't answer. She simply turned her head, looked at him once with calm, unflinching eyes, then looked away. That unsettled him more than if she'd cried or begged. He muttered something under his breath and leaned back. The leader in the front passenger seat turned halfway to glance at her. Even in the dim light, Maya could see the arrogance radiating from his posture. He was the kind of man who had probably gotten away with everything his entire life. "There's how this goes," he said. "We take your truck, unload the cargo, and by the time anyone even notices, we're long gone. You're just a loose end. Maybe we let you live, maybe we don't. Depends on how much trouble you give us." He smiled, but his eyes were dead. Maya tilted her head slightly, her voice steady when she finally spoke. "You think you're in control, but you've already made a mistake." The men erupted into laughter. "What mistake?" One sneered. "Picking you instead of some old man driver." "Please, you were the easiest mark of the night." Maya said nothing more. She'd given them the warning. What came next would speak louder than words. The SUV barreled off the highway, tires crunching gravel as it turned onto a narrow dirt road leading into thick woods. No streetlights here, no houses, just endless black trees standing like silent witnesses. After a few miles, they pulled into a clearing where the other 2 SUVs waited, engines idling. They dragged Maya out of the vehicle, her boots sinking into the soft dirt. The night was humid, the air thick, the sounds of crickets echoing from the trees. They shoved her forward until she stumbled, then caught herself with a controlled step. Every move she made, even when bound, carried discipline. One of them noticed. "She's too calm. I don't like it." "Relax," the leader snapped. "She's tied up. What's she gonna do? Stare us to death?" They all laughed again, but unease rippled beneath it. They didn't understand why a woman kidnapped at gunpoint wasn't trembling, wasn't pleading for her life. They didn't know the truth. Maya was reading the terrain, the angles, the distance between each man, their stances, the way their hands twitched when they held their weapons. She was memorizing every detail like a chess master studying the board. The men opened the SUV's trunks, revealing crowbars, bolt cutters, and empty duffel bags. They planned to head back for her rig, strip the cargo, and vanish into the night with a fortune in stolen electronics. But first they wanted to make sure Maya couldn't interfere. "Bring her over here," the leader ordered, pointing to a tree. Two of them grabbed her arms, shoving her against the rough bark. They pulled out more zip ties, clearly intending to secure her there while they carried out their theft. One of them pressed the cold barrel of a gun into her ribs as the other worked to loop the ties around her wrists. That was their second mistake. In karate, timing is everything. The instant they loosened their grip to adjust her restraints, Maya acted. Her body exploded into motion, fluid and precise. She twisted sharply, snapping her shoulder upward into the gunman's chin with brutal force. Ow! His head cracked back, teeth clacking, and he stumbled. Dropping the pistol to the ground, before the other man could react, Maya pivoted on her heel, driving her knee up into his stomach. Air whooshed out of him as he folded forward. She brought her bound wrists down. Like a hammer, the sharp zip-tied edge slamming into the back of his neck. He crumpled. Shouts erupted all around the clearing. Flashlights jerked, beams slicing through the dark. "Grab her," someone yelled. Maya dove for the dropped pistol, her hand still bound but her movement swift. With one sharp twist and pull, she snapped the plastic zip tie against her thigh, freeing her wrists. Pain stung her skin, but adrenaline drowned it out. She scooped up the pistol, spinning on her heels, stance grounded like she was back in the dojo sparring mat. The thieves froze for a fraction of a second, surprised by the sudden reversal. Then chaos broke loose. Three men charged her at once, one swinging a crowbar. Maya sidestepped, fluid and sharp, letting the heavy swing sail past her. She struck with the heel of her palm into his temple. A strike her sensei had once called iken hisatsu. One blow, certain kill. He dropped instantly, collapsing like a sack of grain. The second attacker lunged, but she pivoted, driving the barrel of the pistol into his throat knot, firing, just striking with brutal efficiency. He gagged and fell, clawing at his neck. Third man tried to tackle her arms wide. Maya spun low, sweeping her leg out in a perfect arc, taking his feet out from under him. He hit the ground hard. Gunfire cracked suddenly, echoing through the clearing. Bullets sparked off the metal frame of a nearby SUV. Maya ducked behind it, her movements sharp and composed. The leader had drawn his weapon and was firing wildly, his shouts filled with rage. "You idiots! She's one woman. Take her down." Maya crouched, breathing deep, steadying herself. Fear wasn't an option. Every lesson she had drilled in her karate training, every long night of discipline and repetition surged into her veins now. She peered around the SUV, eyes locking on the SUV, eyes locking on the SUV's. Leader's stance. His feet were sloppy, his aim wild. He wasn't a fighter, just a bully with a gun. She darted forward, rolling across the dirt as another shot rang out, missing by inches. She closed the distance fast, faster than he expected. Before he could fire again, her hand lashed out, grabbing his wrist and twisting it violently. The gun discharged harmlessly into the sky before she ripped it from his grip and slammed her elbow into his face. Blood spattered as he fell backward, groaning, clutching his nose. The clearing was chaos now. Half the men were down, writhing or unconscious, while the rest hesitated, fear creeping into their eyes. They hadn't expected this. They thought they'd kidnapped a defenseless trucker. Instead, they'd unleashed a storm they couldn't. Control Maya stood in the center of the clearing, pistol gripped tight, chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. Her eyes burned with focus. She wasn't done, not yet. But now the power dynamic had shifted completely. She knew the fight was only half over. There were still men standing, still weapons in play, still danger all around. But one thing was certain, she wasn't the one trapped anymore. They were. And she intended to show them just how badly they'd miscalculated. The clearing was a battlefield now. The night air thick with dust and adrenaline. Maya stood at the center, pistol steady in her hands, eyes locked on the ring of men. Still standing, the bodies of their fallen crew lay scattered across the ground, groaning, unconscious, or completely still. She'd dismantled half of them in seconds, yet the fight wasn't finished. The remaining thieves stared at her like wolves circling, their laughter gone. The place was something far more primal. Fear. The leader was still on the ground, clutching. His bloody nose, fury blazing in his eyes as he barked orders. "Don't just stand there, take her down, she's one woman. One?" His voice cracked, betraying his own panic. Maya said nothing. She shifted her stance, weight balanced perfectly, her grip firm but calm. Her body was a coiled spring, every muscle trained and ready. Karate wasn't about wild violence. It was about precision, control, and delivering devastating power at the exact moment it mattered. One of the thieves tried to prove himself, lunging at her with a hunting knife gleaming under the beams of headlights. He screamed, hoping to rattle her. Maya moved like water, sidestepping with grace, her hand snapping to his wrist. A sharp twist, a crack of bone, and the knife clattered to the dirt. She used his own momentum against him, pulling him down into a brutal knee strike to his chest. That sent him gasping, unable to breathe. The others flinched, hesitation rippling through them. They were armed, they had numbers, but none of it mattered. They weren't fighters. They were opportunists, used to scaring people into submission. Tonight, they had chosen the wrong target. A man near the SUVs raised his gun, trembling but determined. Maya dropped low just as the muzzle flashed, the bullet hissing over her head. She rolled forward, kicking a loose rock up with the tip of her boot. In one fluid motion, she struck it with her heel, sending it flying into his face with brutal accuracy. He yelped, staggering back, dropping the gun as blood poured from his split lip. The leader scrambled to his feet, screaming with rage. "You cowards! She's nothing. Kill her." He reached for a crowbar lying nearby, swinging it wildly as he charged. Maya didn't retreat. She stepped into the arc of his swing, her forearms snapping up to block. The impact reverberated through her bones, but she was grounded, stable. In the same breath, her fist drove forward into his jaw, a strike so sharp it whipped his head sideways with a spray of blood. The crowbar clanged to the dirt. He collapsed again, groaning, hands clutching his mouth where teeth had shattered. His men froze, uncertainty in their eyes. The image before them, a lone woman dismantling their crew one by one, shattering whatever resolve they had left. But fear has a way of making men desperate. "Get the truck," one of them shouted, breaking the silence. "Forget her take. The truck and go." That was when Maya's eyes flicked past them, toward the tree line at the edge of the clearing. In the distance, faint but unmistakable, she saw headlights moving along the highway. She knew if she could create enough chaos, draw them out into the open, there might be a chance someone else would notice. But she couldn't rely on chance. She had to finish this now, before they regrouped. 3 men rushed her at once, the largest carrying a baseball bat. He swung with brutal force, but she ducked, driving her elbow into his ribs, feeling the thud as air left his lungs. The bat mid-swing, ripping it from his hands with practiced precision, and spun it into the next man's legs. He went down screaming as his shin cracked. The third tried to wrap his arms around her from behind, but Maya dropped low, throwing her weight forward, flipping him over her shoulder and slamming him into the dirt with a thud that rattled the air. Her chest rose and fell steadily as she stood again, the bat in her grip. Dust clung to her clothes, sweat ran down her temple, but her focus was absolute. Around her, the once gawky thieves were in ruins. Some were unconscious, some were groaning in pain, and the few left standing were wide-eyed, frozen, unsure whether to fight or flee. "You should walk away," Maya said finally, her voice steady, commanding. "You're already beaten. Make me finish it." For a moment, silence hung heavy. The crickets had even gone quiet, as if the whole forest held its breath. Then one man snarled, lifting a pistol with shaking hands. "Screw this. We're ending it." Before he could fire, Maya hurled the bat with pinpoint accuracy. It spun through the air and struck his wrist, knocking the weapon away with a sickening crack. He howled in pain, dropping to his knees. The fight drained out of them then. One by one, the men backed away, dragging their wounded. Eyes flicking between Maya and the trees as if the shadows themselves would attack next. Their leader, bleeding and broken on the ground, screamed curses at them, ordering them to stand their ground, but they didn't listen. Fear had eaten through their loyalty. Maya walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate, the pistol still in her hand. He tried to crawl backward, scrambling in the dirt, but she closed the distance with ease. Standing over him, she pointed the weapon down. "You thought I was weak?" she said softly, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "You thought I was just a driver, an easy target. You didn't bother to look deeper. That was your mistake." His chest heaved, blood running down his chin. You don't scare me." Maya tilted her head slightly. "You should be." For a long moment, the clearing was silent, except for his ragged breathing. Then, with deliberate calm, she tossed the pistol aside. He flinched, confused. As she crouched low, her eyes locked on his. "I don't need a weapon," she whispered. "You never deserved the power you thought you had. And tonight, you learn that." Her fist lashed out one final time, sharp and precise, slamming into his temple. His eyes rolled back, and he slumped unconscious into the dirt. Maya stood chest, heaving, scanning the clearing. The fight was over. Bodies littered the ground, groans echoing in the night. The men who could still walk had already fled, dragging their broken pride with them. Only the faint rumble of distant traffic reminded her that the world outside was still moving. Unaware of the war that had just been fought in this hidden patch of woods, she wiped the sweat from her brow, breathing deeply, forcing her body to relax. The discipline that karate had instilled in her for years kept her grounded. This wasn't victory to gloat over. It was survival. It was justice in its rawest form. She moved back toward the SUV that had dragged her here, searching its compartments. Inside, she found radios, spare weapons, and maps marked with routes. They hadn't been after her truck by chance. This was part of something bigger, a coordinated ring that had probably been targeting drivers for months. Maya knew what she had to do next. She pulled one of the radios free, flipping it on. Static filled the air, then a voice crackled through. "Unit 3, you there? Report?" Maya pressed the button, her voice calm and cold. "They won't be reporting anymore." Silence followed, then confusion, then the line went dead. Whoever was on the other end now knew something had gone wrong. Maya smiled faintly, a quiet, satisfied curve of her lips. She gathered what evidence she could: maps, weapons, the leader's phone, and shoved it into a duffel bag. Then she walked back toward the main road, leaving the men she had defeated sprawled behind her like discarded shadows. When she finally reached her truck, parked where they'd ambushed her, she placed her hand on the cool metal of the door. It was more than a machine, it was her livelihood, her freedom, her proof of resilience. She climbed in, started the engine, and let the steady rumble ground her once more. The night had nearly swallowed her whole, but she had clawed her way out, stronger than ever. As the highway stretched out before her, endless and open, Maya whispered the words her sensei had drilled into her from the start. The fight is won in the mind before the body ever moves. She had lived that lesson tonight, and for the thieves, who had dared to think she was prey, the scars of that truth would remain long after their bones healed. Story end.